Basically, the diabetes that I was diagnosed with is gone. Diabetes is a disease generally characterized by an inappropriate metabolism of sugar, in this case glucose or blood sugar. There are three basic types of diabetes. One is relatively scarce, it's insipidus, diabetes insipidus. And diabetes insipidus is more of a dysfunction of the pituitary gland, particularly antidiuretic hormone, generally caused by an adenoma as an example, which is a benign tumor generally, not all the time. This is the first type. The second type is child onset diabetes. What this generally is characterized by is either a complete shutdown or a lack of the ability of the cells, known as beta cells, to secrete and synthesize insulin. So when we look at the hormone insulin, it's very complex. It has many, we call them residues, which are peptides or peptide residues. It's polypeptide. And the hormone itself can be weak, but it requires the correct synthesis from the beta cells, which is located in the pancreas. So type 1 is almost always, if correctly diagnosed, required to have insulin dependency, as an example, shots and so on and so forth. Relatively difficult to eradicate or to cure, so to speak, but I have had cases, some of my patients that actually have reverse type 1 diabetes. That's primarily due because it's been misdiagnosed in many cases. So what we do is we run a C-peptide test to see what the secretion value of the beta cells are capable of when it comes to insulin. The third type of diabetes is the one we're more familiar with. It has become more common, and that's adult onset diabetes. There's so many different causes to this condition, from high blood fats, known as triglycerides, or blood foaming, weak insulin factor, weak glucose tolerance factor, GTF, are a few of the more common reasons why diabetes 2 occurs. Frequently, it's induced by a poor diet, poor eating habits, as an example. Secondly, other factors, contributing factors such as low physical activity and other type of lifestyle changes can contribute to type 2 diabetes. Interestingly enough, America is not the leading country with diabetes. There's a lot of other countries ahead of us, as an example. But what's important to understand is that type 2 is one of the easiest types of diabetes to take care of. We can usually see a response that's favorable in treating diabetes just with diet alone. And what we emphasize in this series is, number one, low fat intake that contributes to diabetes, low, high glycemic foods or sugars that contribute to diabetes, particularly refined sugars. So those are the things we're emphasizing right here for you. Is if you know of anyone or you yourself experience type 2 diabetes, that it's generally one of the easiest things to take care of. In my clinic alone, we have probably a 95% rate of curability when it comes to type 2 diabetes. Once again, it's shifting dietary conditions, dietary factors, and that's what we're teaching you here in this series. Along with this, you can also supplement to bolster the efficacy of the food that you're eating when it comes to shifting dietary regimens, so to speak, with this. So, once again, 3 types of diabetes. Type 2, the adult onset diabetes, is the fastest growing diabetes type that we're seeing today, not just in America, but worldwide. And that, once again, is attributed primarily to bad dietary choices. So in this series, it's not only showing you dietary responses that can be beneficial for you, but it's also emphasizing the foods that bolster the nutrients that are required to help diabetes, such as chromium as an example, vanadium, or a few of those things. We've heard so much today about high-fat diets being beneficial. I do want to exercise caution with this. There are so many people that feel benefits by the high fat, but that only has what we refer to as an apex or a peak in which you can reach favorability because you're shifting the amount of simple carbohydrates that you're consuming, and that's generally the case. But high dietary fats, and I want to emphasize this, over a prolonged period of time can lead to something we refer to as ketoacidosis, which generally is extremely detrimental for health. And a lot of you have seen a lot about ketogenesis diet and so on and so forth, but I do want to exercise caution with this. The ketogenesis diet was originally formatted to help epileptic kids or children with epileptic seizures, grand mal, because seizures would be noted in individuals that had higher amounts of sugar, glucose being the one primary food source that the brain requires. So it was instigated from that, and consequently people saw other things that they considered beneficial, such as weight loss, from using the ketogenesis diet. But once again, I want to emphasize this is not a food source that we consider biochemically healthy. It will lead to ketoacidosis in a prolonged uses as an example. So I do exercise caution with that. So with diabetes, in the media, publications, so on and so forth, you hear primarily about what not to eat, what to avoid. The emphasis is don't eat this food, don't eat that food. What we're doing here is we're showing you what you can eat. And that's the benefit. Even getting to a dessert that can be beneficial for diabetics and treating it. So that's what we're here to do for you in this series, is to show you or to indicate to you that these foods that you eat, and eat as much as you want. There's no limitation, as an example, no dieting, because the beneficial properties of these foods have been exhibited to be extremely valuable for conditions such as diabetes. With diabetes as an example, we look, or our sensory conditions, we can see predispositions or a current status of diabetes. As an example, in Eastern philosophy, being able to look at someone's coloration, their body shape, the sound of their voice, and even their smell are all indicative factors that can indicate for us that there is a predisposition or a condition that is currently manifested in diabetes. As an example, the coloration of a diabetic will generally have a yellowish hue. Now, this is different than jaundice. This takes a little practice, but you get used to it. The yellowish coloration in diabetes will generally be around the temples, because these are the signs or the regions that we see that are basically correlated to the pancreas. A diabetic will also have a quality to their voice that is a singing nature. So I'm sure many of us have heard, or you have heard many times, an associate or friend that you know that will oftentimes ask you to go to the store. And when they ask you, are you feeling comfortable enough to go to the store today? Because I really feel good today. You can hear that singing nature. It lofts, it ebbs, and it flows. That nature, that tone of the voice is almost always associated with people that are predisposed to diabetics or diabetes. So that in itself is a clue. Another clue is the smell. The smell of the diabetic it's a sweet smell, but it's not something, as an example, when you're walking next to the bakery. It's different. It's a more of a ketone smell, or a smell that resembles something like, picture fruit that has been sitting out on the counter for a day or 2 days, almost like a rotting smell, but it's not quite that bad. It's definitely a distinguishable smell that's out of balance. So auditory-wise, we can hear through the voice. Olfactory-wise, we can smell. Visually, we can see and sense through coloration in the area on the face that is affected. All of these are slight clues that we can see that basically give us an indication or a clue that someone either is predisposed to diabetes or already manifests the disease itself. Another thing with diabetics, it's to be aware of predispositions or conditions that could occur, is the urine when it's observed in the toilet bowl, how the sediment, it has a higher sediment value to it. We refer to it as specific gravity, but basically it can be visually seen often. And that's another clue. Obviously, excessive thirst, polydipsia, excessive urination, polyuria are other clues that are associated with diabetes. Slow wound healing is another factor that if one cuts themselves and it takes a longer than what is expected time to heal, that's another possible indicating factor. So these are clues to be aware of, particularly in diabetes. And obviously, as we go through the pathologies here, we'll indicate other conditions that are in the same manner, visual, auditory, so on and so forth, about predispositions to these diseases. Predispositions are warnings, like the storm warning that's about ready to hit, the hurricane warning. So preparing yourself for a condition is often beneficial to withstand the storm, so to speak. Predispositions also, if corrected sooner, then the likelihood of correcting the condition is far more likely than if it's in a chronic state. So we want to be aware of predispositions. When I was 17, I was diagnosed as diabetic, in this case type 2 diabetes. My glucose level was high, in the 300s. And at that time, I had very little knowledge of chemistry, biochemistry, or medicine. But I was aware with myself that I didn't want to be on insulin, as an example. My mother was diabetic. She was insulin dependent. Basically, the diabetes that I was diagnosed with is gone. I'm no longer considered a type 2 diabetic. Blood sugar is stable, and energy, diet, everything else feels great. I've never felt better than I have in my life right now, and I'm 60 years old. So if I can do it, you can do it. And that's what I'm here to do, is to share that with you.